Welcome to GR Hub. Are you a student struggling with your project in education, be it at undergraduate level, postgraduate diploma level, master's level, or PhD level? This video is for you. So I would encourage you to watch this video to understand most of the content that should be found in your work. So chapter 1 of a typical education research project or thesis contains the following subheadings. Okay, 1.1 is your background of the study. 1.2 is the statement of the problem. As soon as you are done with 1.2 comes 1.3, which is the aim and objectives of the study, often called in education purpose of the study and specific objectives. Now, as soon as you're done with 1.3, you move on to 1.4. 1.4 in this instance will be research questions, okay? And this is because it is connected to 1.3, the objectives of specific objectives of the study. So as soon as you're done with 1.4, which is research questions, will now come research hypothesis. Now, that will be 1.5. As soon as you're done with 1.5 research questions, you should be moving on to 1.6, which is significance of the study. Now, however, you may like to bring your assumptions of the study first as 1.6, and in this case, it will make significance of the study 1.7. Now, if significance of the study is your 1.7, thereafter should come 1.8, being the scope of the study. Now, immediately after your 1.8 being the scope of the study comes limitations of the study, which should be 1.9. Okay? Now, after 1.9 should come 1.10, which is definition of terms. But please take note, some supervisors in education would want their students to incorporate 1.11, which is a subheading I feel should be in chapter 2, as I'm going to mention to you subsequently. So 1.11 to such supervisors will be theoretical framework, but preferably 1.11, which is theoretical framework, should be found in chapter 2. So those are 10 subheadings that should be found in your chapter 1. So let's move on to chapter 2. So now in chapter 2, there are 3 major subheadings, but your supervisor may want you to incorporate a 4th one, which will now make 4 subheadings. So what are these subheadings and how should they be arranged? The first subheading, which is 2.1 under your literature review chapter 2, should be the conceptual framework. Okay? Now, you either could call it conceptual framework or you call it conceptual review, whichever one you want to call it. That should be 2.1. 2.2 should be the theoretical review or theoretical framework, and it comes immediately, of course, after the conceptual framework. 2.3 should be the empirical review. Okay, so if you're writing an education research or writing an education project, please take note, these 3 elements should make the subheadings of your chapter 2. 2.1 conceptual framework or review, 2.2 theoretical framework or review, 2.3 empirical framework or review. Now, I told you earlier that your supervisor may want you to incorporate a 4th subheading. So what is that subheading? It is 2.4 summary of literature review. Okay, so let's now move to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is called the research methodology. In this chapter, there are several subheadings, starting with the very first subheading being research design. So 3.1 under chapter 3 should be your research design. 3.2 after your research design should be the study area or area of the study, whichever name you would want to call it. Okay, immediately after discussing the study area or area of the study should come 3.3. 3.3 is where you discuss the population of the study. As soon as you're done discussing 3.3, which is the population of the study, comes 3.4. In 3.4, you should be discussing the sampling technique. Okay, so after discussing the sampling technique in 3.4 comes 3.5, which is the sample itself. Okay, then after 3.5 being the sample, so 3.1 was the research design, 3.2 was the study area, 3.3 was the population, 3.4 is the sampling technique, 3.5 is the sample. After 3.5 comes 3.6, which is instrumentation. Now, under instrumentation 3.6, you have 2 subheadings being 3.6.1 and 3.6.2. 3.6.1 is validity of the instrument. 3.6.2 is reliability of the instrument. Now, once you are done discussing instrumentation and these subheadings under instrumentation comes 3.7. So what should you be discussing under 3.7? You should be discussing the procedure for data collection. So as soon as you're done with discussing the procedure for data collection in 3.7 comes 3.8, the procedure for data preparation and scoring. And that brings us to 3.9. Under 3.9, you should be discussing the procedure for data analysis. And as soon as you're done with that comes 3.10, where you'll be discussing operational definition of the research variables for your study. So we are now in chapter 4. In chapter 4, there are 3 major subheadings. Please take note, chapter 4 is called Results and Discussion of Findings. It may be called Data Analysis and Results. Depending on which one it is called, please take note, irrespective of that, it contains 3 subheadings. The first subheading is 4.1, General Description of Research Variables. The second subheading is 4.2, the presentation of results. And 4.3, being the last subheading, is the discussion of findings. Immediately you are done, you can now move to chapter 5. So now we are in chapter 5. In chapter 5, there are supposed to be 3 subheadings, but recently 2 other subheadings are now found in your chapter 5. So traditionally, chapter 5 should be called Summary, Conclusion, and Recommendations. So the first subheading in chapter 5 should be summary, the second subheading should be conclusion, the third subheading should be recommendations. However, in recent times, 2 more subheadings have been introduced into the chapter 5 for particular reasons I'm going to be explaining in subsequent videos. These 2 subheadings are 5.4, which is suggestions for further study, and 5.5, which is contribution to knowledge. So it now makes 5 subheadings in chapter 5, which is still called summary, conclusion, and recommendations. Now, immediately after your chapter 5 comes references, okay? And if you have tables, list of figures, those chapters or those pages would have to come after your chapter 5 and references. Now, if you want to really know the details of each of these subheadings as contained in the various chapters we've mentioned, please watch out for more videos on my channel. Endeavor to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be seeing you